Welcome to The Disappearing Mind, a unique podcast helping you find clarity and support along your dementia journey. Now, join National Dementia Trainer and Coach Dawn Platt for an all-new episode.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Dawn Platt. Welcome to The Disappearing Mind. Today on the podcast, we are going to talk a little bit about understanding repetitive questions in dementia care. Actually, the title of this podcast is Answering on Repeat. I try and talk about real topics and real subjects, questions that come up so frequently in dementia caregiving. And we're going to talk a little bit today about caregiving conversations and a podcast where we want to tackle tough topics and celebrate small victories of caring for loved ones with dementia. Again, every dementia caregiver has probably faced this topic, managing repetitive questions when someone has dementia, and it can be frustrating, can be difficult to do. Well, let's just talk about what's happening. What is a repetitive question? So it's a question, they're typical questions that they ask, that they may ask every few minutes, every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, every 1 minute, whatever it is. And so you know the questions that I'm talking about. What time is dinner? Where are we going? When are we going home? Why can't I drive anymore? These are typical questions and many more that we would consider repetitive questions, and whether or not they really want an answer can vary. Sometimes they're just feeling a little insecure. Many times these questions come every few minutes, sometimes every few seconds, and again, can be frustrating, can be heartbreaking, and it can be exhausting. So there are reasons behind these repetitive questions that we'll talk about today, and we're going to break it down and explore some areas. Why do repetitive questions happen? Very common in all types of dementia. We see this very early on, but how to respond without losing your patience. I think that this is a trick, and this is something we have to teach ourselves. And practical strategies for redirecting and calming your loved one. And of course, at the end of this podcast, we're going to do a question and answer segment where I answer questions about handling this common challenge. So take a deep breath, take notes if you want, grab yourself a cup of coffee or beverage, and let's go ahead and get into this segment. Why do people ask repetitive questions? It's important to understand the why, and I always say this about dementia. When you understand the why, it makes it much easier to cope with. Yeah, I always say to analytical people, there isn't an answer to everything in dementia. Everything is not going to make sense. There's not a common answer, but there is some science behind the reason that this happens, and generally, the why is a number of reasons. And these are signs that maybe your loved one is feeling anxious, insecure. Maybe they're experiencing memory loss, especially short-term memory. And we know that comes in stages. You may find that in the earlier stages to the mid stages, people do ask more repetitive questions, and then time goes on and they don't do that so much. But maybe it's as simple as needing reassurance or comfort. And they just don't know what else to say, don't know what else to do. They're feeling a little bit antsy, and so they ask questions. Think about that when these questions are coming. What's really happening? What's the root cause of this? Maybe they're just curious about what's going to happen next, or it could be they're confused about their surroundings. They may not remember your home. They may not remember your family. They may not remember being in a new situation or going a new place. And so it causes them to be antsy and ask questions. They may be looking around for routine or familiarity. Just the sheer need of not knowing the reality can cause them to just ask questions over and over again. So let me give you an example. Someone with dementia may not remember that you just answered the question, but the feeling of uncertainty or worry remains. Asking the question again is their way of seeking reassurance. You can almost always think that this is what's happening. for whatever reason, they're seeking solace, they're seeking reassurance. And that would be a good step to helping them feel calmer, feel better, less anxious. Imagine waking up in a foreign country where you don't speak the language and every face around you looks unfamiliar. I think that you would probably have several questions too. Well, sometimes those repetitive questions that people with dementia ask are really about comfort, fear, or simply trying to make sense of the world. And I think that we lose track of the thought that they're in a different place. They may not recognize all of their surroundings at that particular time. And it's going to cause them to ask repetitive questions just for comfort. How do we respond to repetitive questions without losing our patience? I mean, we all know that people, I do it. I'll ask a question, I'll think about it, and 20 minutes later, I'll ask the same question. But how do we do that without losing our patience? Let's be honest, repetitive questions can test your patience, no matter who you are. And hearing the same thing every few minutes can be very exhausting. Remember, it's the disease, not the person. It's dementia. If we can focus on that, we're going to be in a better place to respond to our loved one. Here's some practical ways to respond without losing your cool. Stay calm and reassuring. Use a gentle tone when you're speaking to them and consistent wording in your answers. You don't have to give a long answer, but a simple response like, dinner is at 6 p.m., we'll eat together soon. Repeating this calmly can help. I think the thing of it is, and I like to answer people's questions, and sometimes I over-answer. I'm aware of that. But the simpler, the better. It's just a simple response. And sometimes it's not your answer, but the tone of your voice is more reassuring, which will really be helpful. You can provide some kind of visual reminder, such as Post-it notes or signs, like a whiteboard that says dinner at 6 p.m., and you can direct them to that. Or doctor's appointment today at 2 p.m. They can read that. Sometimes seeing the answer reduces the need to ask. Don't tell them too far in advance, but certainly that's something that you may want to do. Redirect with activities. If the repetitive question seems tied to anxiousness, try and redirect attention with some sort of favorite activity or distracting activity, like listening to music or folding towels, looking at photo albums, having a cup of coffee, or just even saying, if it's a dinner question, let's have some tea while we wait for dinner. These kind of things can really help with repetitive questions. The other thing we always want to do is validate emotions. And we know this not having dementia. We want to be validated. And it's no different. We want to validate how they're feeling, not just the question. Sometimes it's not really the question. It's your loved one seems to keep asking, when are we going home? They might be expressing the fact that they feel unsafe or uncertain. I mean, these things can be common with dementia because if they don't recognize where they are, it can cause them to feel uncertain. Try responding with something like, you're safe here with me, or let's sit together for a while. Or I like to say, I'm here, I'll help you through it, don't worry. That really kind of sets the tone for those kinds of anxious behavior that promotes repetitive questions. The other thing we want to do is kind of limit any triggers. If there's too much noise or an unfamiliar environment or changes in their normal routine or even new people coming into the picture, a calm, predictable setting can reduce repetitive questions. When they kind of know what's coming next and kind of understand or have been reassured about where we are or what we're doing, can really be helpful in not triggering them into anxiety or more questions. Let's talk a little bit about some real questions and real solutions. I have come up with a list of questions that I've received from families throughout my support groups and really just in working with families overall that they have asked. And let's just get into that. Maybe this will help you with your loved one who has repetitive questions. Here's question number 1. My mom asks, what time is it? Every few minutes. And even when she can see the clock, she asked me that question, what can I do? This is a great question. It is common, happened with my mom. The truth is, even if they see the clock, their brain may not be responding and processing what the clock means. Mom used to read the clock and she would read it out loud, but then she would ask me again, what time was it? The concept of time can be confusing with them. And even though they see it and you point it out, they may not process it as it's 5 o'clock. Try maybe a digital clock with large numbers. I got one of those. They're available really all over on Amazon and all other places, department stores. And some of those digital clocks even say morning, afternoon, or evening. It says Sunday and the date and the time. That's really prompting and cueing and very helpful. Create a daily schedule board as well with breakfast at 8 a.m., lunch at 12 p.m., dinner at 6 p.m. Respond to them calmly with the same answer each time. It's almost lunchtime. We'll eat together soon. That consistency and soothing voice is going to really help. Remember, patience is key. It's not about time. It's about reassurance. And the reassurance you give them is going to really help. A story, one of the clients I worked with in coaching, you could time his questions. And this gentleman was a brilliant man. He traveled the world, retired bishop of a very large denomination. And every 5 minutes, he would ask a question. And it was so scheduled. Every 5 minutes, he would ask a question. And generally the same question, who are you and what are we doing here? Every 4 minutes and 55 seconds, I would interject and distract him with conversation. And it really was able to delay his questions and keep him on another track where he wasn't asking repetitive questions. Now, did that cure? No, it didn't cure anything. However, it did delay it and distract it for a period of time. And that's really our goal, is to be able to distract and provide that assurance. Question number 2, my husband keeps asking when his parents are coming to visit. His parents passed away years ago. Should I tell him the truth? This question is so tough. Correcting your loved one by reminding them of the loss can cause them to re-experience grief every time they ask the question. So sometimes it's as if they're hearing it for the first time. So imagine that. Grief over and over again. You don't really want to do that. Let's try instead to validate and redirect and say something. Here's where the little white lie comes in. And I know it's difficult for some of you to do, but many of you have tried this and found it to be so successful. Try say something like, I'm sure they would love to see you, or tell me about your favorite memory with them, or even, wow, they're on vacation, they'll be back tomorrow. Something like that is just really helpful, doesn't hurt anyone, and it gives an answer and provides relief for the person. Redirect the conversation through a positive memory or suggest an activity that connects them to the loved one, like looking through photographs, that sort of thing. Really good questions. Thank you for that. Question number 3. My dad consistently asks, when are we leaving? Even when we're not going anywhere. And what's the best way to handle this? Okay, again, questions like this often come from an individual who has a sense of restlessness or anxiety. They're anticipating something. Your dad may feel like he needs to be somewhere familiar, maybe work, somewhere familiar or meaningful, and maybe he feels like he's behind. Here's a number of responses you might try. And again, we're not answering a question. We are just putting them at ease and responding, and just say, Dad, not just yet. Have some tea first, and then we'll see. Putting them off, redirecting them, and then maybe offer a small task and ask, can you help me fold the laundry? Can you help me fold the towels while we wait? That gives them a sense of purpose, something to focus on. Opening mail, looking at the newspaper, folding a towel. These are all things that could prove helpful. And then sometimes a short walk or a drive around the neighborhood can help reset their internal clock. And maybe this happens at the same time every day. Maybe your parent worked 3 to 11 and they are ready to go to work. And that will help ease that burden of that sense that I'm going somewhere. Often it's less about leaving and more about needing reassurance as to where they are and where they belong. So keep that in mind if you get that kind of question. Okay, question number 4. How do I stop myself from snapping when the same question is asked over and over and over again? Okay, I hear you. You're human. We're all human, and this can be very frustrating. Here's some tips that you want to try and remember. Take some deep breaths. Sometimes stepping away from the situation for a moment can prevent that snap. Record your answers on a notepad or a whiteboard and save you from repeating yourself. Say the same phrase in the same tone over and over again when you respond to them, and this can be very helpful. Remind yourself that it's dementia, not the person. It's dementia that you're dealing with. And then how about practicing some self-care here? Caregiver burnout is real. After doing this for 8 hours a day, step back when you need to, even if it's just for a few minutes, take a break, go sit on the porch, have a cup of tea, have a soda, whatever it is you do, but give yourself some grace. You're doing the best you can. There is no manual for this. I try and give you several tips, and I think if you try them, you'll find that they're successful most of the time, not all of the time, but give them a try. It's really important that you have some key takeaways today to manage repetitive questions. So here they are. Patience is your superpower. Patience, patience, patience. We're not all born with that. We don't all have it. Consistency calms. Use the same words in the same tone and the same expressions. They can read you, so be sure and do that. Visual reminders help. Schedules, clocks, and notes can reduce anxiety, even if they carry around the note and not read it. Validating emotions over facts. So sometimes it's the feeling behind the question that matters most. Check and see what that might be. That's going to give you a real cue to how to deal with this. And then self-care isn't selfish. You can't pour into an empty cup. If you're overwhelmed, you're going to continue to be overwhelmed until you take a break. Repetitive questions are a symptom, not a personal attack. Your calm patience means the world to your loved one, even when it feels like you're answering on repeat. Lots of resources out there. I want to remind you about the Alzheimer's Association 24/7 helpline at 1-800-272-3900. The Alzheimer's Foundation of America, www.alzfdn.org. Lots and lots of resources. Our website at thedisappearingmind.com. We have resources available to you. There are lots of local support groups and other materials that are available to you. You're not alone in this. We wish you the best in dementia care. This wraps up our episode today of Caregiving Conversation. I hope today's insights give you a little more confidence and a lot more compassion for handling repetitive questions. We all go through that very common symptom that we see across all dementias. And if you found the episode helpful, please subscribe, share it, give it to another caregiver, leave a review. Visit us on YouTube, visit us on Facebook and all media platforms. We appreciate you. The more people find us, the more we can support them and support you. If you do have questions, send them to us at the podcast. We'd love to answer your questions in a future segment. Until next time, this is Dawn Platt. Make it a memorable day.
Thank you for joining us for the Disappearing Mind podcast. We hope it's helped you find clarity and support along your journey. Be sure to subscribe to never miss an episode, visit our website to suggest future topics, and share the podcast with friends and family.